Let's start with Moonfall in 2022, a film that had everything going for it. So you had the perfect director, Roland Emmerich. He had an incredible track record of making large, successful blockbusters like Independence Day and The Day After Tomorrow. Then you had the star power of Patrick Wilson and Halle Berry, two legends who both have a reasonably strong box office track record and endless Academy Awards between them. Then let's also not forget the appeal of a crazy amount of special effects, because the plot involves the moon literally falling out of orbit. Honestly, this movie literally ticks all the boxes, and on paper, it looks like a guaranteed success. So it's not surprising that Lionsgate was so confident they spent $150 million hoping it would be the next big sci-fi franchise. And you know what? The initial signs were good. The first trailer had a positive reaction, and the worst of the pandemic was mostly over. So cinema numbers were creeping back to normal. Everything looked good, and this was going to be an easy box office win. Right? Well, no, that's not what happened at all. The film was a total disaster. Moonfall was one of the biggest flops of the decade. It barely made $67 million worldwide, which is not even half of its budget. So, yeah, honestly, I can't quite make sense of this one. Tell me below why you think it failed so bad. The director of the movie, Emmerich, said he believed that audiences were just not interested in disaster movies anymore. This is such a sad realization for a director once known for turning apocalyptic stories into mega blockbusters. So perhaps Moonfall is just the sign of the end of an era? It also almost makes me feel sorry for Lionsgate, who took another big L just the year before with Chaos Walking. Chaos Walking is based on a popular young adult novel, which is basically a fiction novel targeted at teenagers, often coming-of-age stories. Other popular novels include Hunger Games, Twilight, and Divergent. Lionsgate hoped it would kickstart a whole trilogy. So let's see what we've got so far. Two of the most recognizable high-profile actors hot off some of the biggest franchise blockbusters, and a source material that has a solid track record. Seriously, what could go wrong? Well, it turns out the film was stuck in production hell for years and had disastrous test screenings forcing massive reshoots. By the time it finally limped into theaters, the budget had ballooned to $125 million. The movie made only $100 million worldwide. So not only did it fail to break even, almost no one even knows this film exists. Another brutal failure was Doolittle in 2020. This was Robert Downey Jr.'s first major project after Avengers Endgame, when he was seen as the face of Marvel. Universal had no trouble writing a $175 million check for the Doolittle budget. They marketed it as a whimsical family adventure that could become the start of their next franchise. And to be fair, back in 1998, Eddie Murphy's Dr. Doolittle had been a massive hit. It cost $71 million but pulled in almost $300 million worldwide. That kind of track record made a new Doolittle movie look like a safe bet, especially with Downey being one of the most popular actors on the planet at the time. On paper, it should have been a slam dunk, but instead, it was a disaster. Doolittle made $250 million worldwide, but once you factor in marketing and distribution, it lost tens of millions. Critics savaged the film for its incoherent story and bizarre-looking talking CGI animals. For Downey, it was a harsh lesson that being Iron Man was not always going to be enough. The Matrix Resurrections in 2021 was meant to bring Neo and Trinity back and revive the legendary franchise. Instead, it barely made $156 million worldwide, falling short on a budget close to $200 million. But what's worse than that is that fans and critics hated it. And it was a disappointing end to one of the most iconic pieces of cinema in a generation. Then we have Cats in 2019. Universal thought they had a guaranteed hit with one of the most successful Broadway musicals of all time, brought to life with an all-star cast. Taylor Swift, Idris Elba, Judi Dench, and James Corden were all on board. And Cats was Broadway royalty. It ran for over 18 years and became one of the most successful musicals in history. Universal also saw the recent success of musical adaptations like La La Land, The Greatest Showman, and Beauty and the Beast, which made Cats feel like a safe bet. But the nightmare began with the first trailer. The digital fur technology horrified audiences, and in response, the internet came up with a mountain of memes. Tearing the movie apart before it was even released, Cats became an instant punchline, and the movie did not stand a chance. The film cost $95 million and only made $75 million back. And it became one of the worst flops in recent memory. And then there was Green Lantern in 2011. Long before the modern DC universe took shape, Warner Brothers bet heavily on Ryan Reynolds as their next big superhero. The studio poured $200 million into creating an incredible cosmic world, loaded with cutting-edge CGI. The ambition was clear: launch a new franchise to rival Marvel's success. But it bombed spectacularly. Green Lantern grossed just $220 million worldwide, which wasn't enough to cover marketing and distribution costs. Plans for sequels were scrapped almost immediately. And this film effectively cut short the character's life before the franchise could begin. Here are some honorable mentions, because not every flop was a catastrophic bomb, but some came very, very close. First up, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore in 2022. Should have been an easy box office win. Harry Potter made over $7 billion in box office from 8 films. So the books had already done all the hard work and built a massive fan base eager for anything related to Harry Potter, giving spin-offs like Fantastic Beasts a ready-made audience, which also means the film had an almost guaranteed success. With a built-in fan base, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore should have been a runaway success. But you know what? It only pulled in $400 million globally, which, when compared to the Harry Potter series, is very disappointing. The poor reception effectively ended the Fantastic Beasts franchise before it could really take off. The Rock, Gal Gadot, and Ryan Reynolds. This combo alone should spell box office success, especially in 2021, after their combined success from Wonder Woman, Jumanji, and Deadpool. This made so much sense on paper that Netflix was willing to invest $200 million into what they thought would be their biggest blockbuster ever. The outcome? A movie called Red Notice in 2021 that portrayed an FBI profiler teaming up with an art thief to catch a rival criminal. And yes, the movie got Netflix a lot of high streaming numbers on its initial release. But the numbers were similar to what Bird Box achieved years earlier with Sandra Bullock. The difference? Well, Bird Box only cost $19 million to make, but Red Notice cost almost 10 times that at $200 million. So on just raw numbers, the increase in streaming numbers was not nearly as impressive as it seemed. Also, it didn't create the cultural impact Netflix hoped for. You see, Netflix wanted another Bird Box phenomenon, and they thought these bankable Hollywood stars would give it to them. But that never happened. In fact, Red Notice disappeared without anyone even registering the film had ever existed. And of course, the lack of audience interest killed any chance for a sequel or spin-off.